Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video on Lumber Capital Log Yard. Today's topic is what not to do with your saw blade. Let's get into it. If you've ever run a sawmill, you know that the better the blade, the better the lumber. Blades don't come cheap considering just how many you can go through. In that case, what are some of the things to avoid when it comes to blades? Number one is running your saw blade without lubrication. It is an option to order this mill with the Lube Miser, and we highly recommend it. To constantly have some water flowing on your blade will really save you on blades because it's going to be cooling down the blade. I've already talked a lot about this on the channel, but we can't stress it enough that to have a constant flow of that water on it to cool it down really does save you on blades. You can also add in some pine sol or dish soap to also keep your blade clean. We recommend this if you are sawing a wood with a lot of sap like pine. We don't cut pine a lot, so I don't usually put it in with the water, but I do see the value in it with certain species of wood. Number two is not paying attention to your PSI. You actually have a little gauge here where you should be able to see what the tension is on your blade, and you should really pay attention to this. It can fluctuate, that is normal, but you don't want it to be fluctuating too much, so you really want to pay attention to that. And there's a little sticker right here where it does say what you should try and keep it at, between 2,800 and 3,000 PSI. You can see that's where ours is at right now. When you first put on a blade and make a cut, it's your first cut with a new blade on, you might notice that it drops. Usually Jade and I will put more tension on it to get it back up to where it should be, but if it continues to drop after that initial time, we won't tension it up anymore. Usually this doesn't happen, but you want to be careful that you don't continue to tighten it if you notice that it is continuously dropping, because it could be a number of things, but you could just be stretching out the blade and then it will snap on you. Obviously you want to avoid that. So if you're new to operating a sawmill, that's something to keep in mind. Number three is running your blade until it's dull. If you want to preserve your blade for future resharpenings, then you're going to want to take it off before it is completely dull. Otherwise, you're going to really increase the risk of the blade snapping. It can be challenging to know when you reach this point. The best way that I can tell is when the blade doesn't cut as fast. When we first put on a blade, I can usually go pretty fast through the log, and as it starts to dull, it will really start to slow down. And before I end up getting any kind of chatter marks or anything like that with it really being dull or even snapping, I want to take it off and put on a new one. And while it is time consuming to put blades off and on, especially with the LT40, with the doors that don't just swing, you actually have to remove them, right? It takes a while. It's still worth it if you can just go faster because you're not putting as much stress on the machine. Number four is not having your blade guide in. If you're new to milling, you want to make sure that when you're cutting a log, your blade guide is as far in and as close to your cant as possible. This is going to make your blade a lot more sturdy. If you're running with it all the way out, there's a lot more space for it to warp and bend. Whereas if the blade guide is in a lot closer, it's going to make it a lot more sturdy. Now this of course gets challenging the larger your log gets. And that's why cutting a much larger log is a lot harder on your blade. I mean, you can imagine why that would be, right? But another reason for that is that your blade guide has to be all the way out there. And so there's just a lot more surface area that your blade is going through the wood, and your blade guide doesn't get to be as close. The fifth and last thing that you want to avoid is running into your dogs. There's no safety mechanism to prevent you from hitting other parts of the mill with your blade. That includes these things, as well as the clamp and anything else that sticks out. If you're not careful, you can run your blade right into them. And as much as I'd like to say, if you pay really close attention, it will never happen to you, I've definitely done it quite a few times. Not quite a few, a couple times. I think that anybody who's ever run a sawmill probably has a few times. And talk about destroying your blade. That it does. If you want to take a look at some of the damage we've done to the mill, just take a look at this one right here. So you can see that this one's eaten up a little bit. Why it's chewed all the way around it is that when the blade hit it, it probably spun like that. And so yeah, it's all chewed up around there, and also a little bit on that too. If you are a subscriber and enjoy this content, consider checking out our merch, where we have a variety of different t-shirts with funny sayings on them, as well as some Carhartt merch. So if you want to do that, make sure to go to lumbercapital.shop. Anyways, I think that about wraps it up for today's video. If you enjoyed, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. But other than that, I'll see you back here next time.